So what I want you to do, guys, okay, is first things first, in Notepad++, I want you to create a new document, and you'll get a new document that's flashing at line 1, all right? And what I am going to do is I want you to follow on through the numbers that I'm doing. So when I type in something on line 1, you need to do it on line 1. If you do it that way, when I talk to you about going on to line 3, your code and my code will match, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is, remember in the last session we talked about carrier bags for our project, all right? And because this is going to be a web template that we're going to use going forwards for our assignment, what we want to do is save this file, and this will be the first file inside of our new carrier bag, okay? So what we need to do is go File, Save As, and then when we save as, we want to go and find a location where we can create a new folder. So this would be inside your Unit 3 or 13 folder. Inside there, we create a new folder, and when that folder is going to be called Website Template. Once you've created that folder, inside there, we're going to create a new file. And what did we say the first file would be called? Well done. Is that with an uppercase I or a lowercase I? Lowercase I. And then when we put the end part in, we put .html. Do not choose, because you might get later on you might get a bit lazy, or you might just click enter. Don't choose the save file type as. If you get into the routine of putting .html at the end of your file name, then you get into a good routine. So once you've got index with lowercase I .html, click save inside of your website template folder. We know from the first file being indexed, that's the one that we're going to land on when we go to your website. Okay, that's your home page, inverted commas, all right? That means that that's going to be your first page that you go to. So when we now start coding this, we know that HTML is written using tags. And the first tag that we're going to do with our HTML page requires us to do a HTML tag. So this is the open tag for HTML. Notice it's gone blue on Notepad++. That's because Notepad++ has noticed this as a HTML page. So if this is an open tag here, we want to create a close tag. And a close tag is the same as the open tag, but with a / at the front of it. So as you can see here, we now have a close tag. The nice thing about Notepad++, as you may have seen before, is when you create an open and a close tag, it highlights the close and opening tags when you click on them. So now a web browser, when it loads up that index.html page, it will understand that you've got HTML inside this document, and it will treat that document as a web page when it comes to displaying things. So on line 2, I put a bit of space, okay, and now we're going to put in our head tag. And the open tag for head is exactly that. So with every open, well, in most cases with every open, we do a close tag, and the close tag is going to be /HEAD. So just to re-emphasize the fact that in Notepad++, if you click on the open tag, it will show you the corresponding close tag. So you can see there that the further or the more amount of code that you write, the further down that HTML tag is going to go down. So it's quite useful. So when you're doing a bit of bug testing and you've got lots of code in and you don't know whether you've done a close tag, you can click on the open tag and then scroll down and see where the purple corresponding close tag could be. So it's quite a good way of, as I say, bug testing your work. So inside of your head area, you're going to be able to put scripts and details that aren't necessarily going to be displayed in the main center area of a content of a web page. So that's like the white space that you see on a web page. That's stuff inside the head won't be displayed in there. The good thing about the head is that we can put in there a title tag, and a title tag allows us to identify what the web page is about. So here is our open tag, and then I'm going to type in, this is my website template. and then I'm going to do a close tag. What you could also put after that website template bit here is you could put a full stop and you could put created by, and then you could put your name. So once you've done that, if you think about us as human beings, right, what does our head sit on top of? Shoulders, which is on our body. All right. So if you think about the body area is where most of our organs, most of our things are. Okay, and that's the same with our website. Is most of our content is in the body. So we're going to create a tag for body, and then we're going to do a couple of lines of space, and then do the close tag. So on line 8. I want you to have the close tag. So you've got 6 and 7 are blank at the moment. So currently, if we save this now, so don't forget, when we look at Notepad++, if the disk is red, it means that changes have been made. If I now save it, because remember we've saved it as it's already called index, notice that the file has, or the little icon has now gone blue. That means that the file has been saved. If and when you do lots of code and you run it and you think it's not worked, always first of all check here. A lot of students will historically have gone and looked at their original version and the changes haven't been made. That's because they've not saved them in Notepad++. So once you've got this, what you can do is click on Run and go to Chrome, launching Chrome. Once you launch in Chrome, you'll notice not only that I've got lots of tabs open, but you'll notice that there's no space here, alright? Or there's nothing in the space. That's because we've got no content in there. But if you look at your tab up here, you'll see that your name or your created by or this is my first web template will be displayed. So, what you want to do now, or what we want to do now, is start to create the structure of our web page. And the way that we do that is we create some new tags that we've not covered previously. And these new tags are called divs, D-I-V. A div tag is effectively a divider. It will divide the page up into different sections for you so that you can put content within them. So the first one that I'm going to put in there is going to be called wrapper. But we're going to start off with div space, and we're going to give it an ID. Because we're going to have multiple versions of these divs, we want to make sure that we can target them with an ID. So we're going to give it an ID and we're going to make it equal, and then we give it a name inside speech marks. So we're going to call it wrapper. And then we're going to close the bracket, and then we're going to close the tag. So we put /div. Now at this point I'm going to get you to stop and I'm going to get you to listen, because this wrapper is going to be something that contains a lot of our web page features. I always liken a wrapper to a multi-bag packet of crisps. Some of you look like you're hungry already. It's almost lunchtime. So if you think of a multi-bag packet of crisps, it contains lots of individual bags, yes? So the way I think about this, or would like you to think about this, is the wrapper will contain all of the objects within our little web page area. So we know that in our web pages we're going to have banner, we're going to have a navigation bar, we're going to have a content area, and we're going to have a footer. Yeah, can remember our designs that we looked at in previous sessions. What we're then going to do is we're going to populate those and put those inside a wrapper, which means if I take that multi-bag packet of crisps that's our wrapper and move it anywhere, all of the content within it is going to follow, and it's going to take that movement quite nicely. Does that make sense so far? So, because we've got our open tag for wrapper and our close tag for wrapper there, I haven't told you to put it on a few new lines, but I would like you to do that. So put on line 6 your open tag, have a space in here in line 7 and then put the close tag on line 8. Inside this wrapper now, we're going to be putting our content of our web page. So we're going to use another divider tag. So div, we're going to give it an ID, and it's going to equal. And the first thing that we're going to have at the top of our very top of our web page is what? Do you think? Title or a banner or a logo? Well, let's put a banner, because we can always put the navigation underneath that. So let's give it a name or an ID of banner.
Should we close it after?
Yes, please. We're going to close that now. So /div. Okay. And then what did we say sits underneath the banner? The navigation. So let's give somebody else the opportunity to say what they think the tag would be underneath. So what tag would we write?
ID nav.
So div ID equals speech mark. I'm going to call it nav bar. Okay, so let's call it nav bar. Close the speech mark, close the bracket, and then close the tag. And then what normally sits underneath our nav bar? The content. Well done. So who thinks they know what the tag's going to be, what the piece of code is that we're going to write? So it's going to be div ID equals speech mark content. Close the bracket, close the tag. And then finally, what's at the very bottom of most web pages? Small print or a footer. Well done. So we're going to create a div for the footer. So far, we've created dividers around our wrapper area to separate and give us areas to put specific content in by using these divs. So if you save that and then preview it in your window, you'll notice that there's not much change to what we've got so far. You won't actually see anything as a result of our code. One thing to make sure that we are very much aware of is that our open tags and our close tags, and make sure we've got the right speech marks here. Okay? What's worth also remembering, okay, when you look at Notepad++, it has a very good feature in that it tells you by colour where there could be a problem. So if we look at our code, for instance, and I maybe forget to put a bracket at the beginning, notice the colour changes for that line. That is a very good indication that something's not quite right. Compare it to what you've done before, and then you'll see that actually, yeah, I've not got a bracket here. Or it could be that I've not got a bracket here, because notice this now has gone to a different colour in comparison to those ones. So just get into the practice of looking through your code, making sure that it looks how it should do. Another issue, another common one, is if you forget to put a speech mark. Notice this has now gone like a yellow colour. That's because the speech mark has been omitted. The rest of the code looks fine, it's just the name bit has changed. So just make sure, again, that you have got your speech marks. So this is the structure, this is our framework for our web page. So far, we've not done anything too interesting. I'm going to save this so that the disk goes blue. And now what I'm going to do inside of these divider tags is I'm going to put a little bit of content. So inside of our footer, So between the open tag and the close tag, I'm going to put a new line. So I have a space for line 11 here, as seen here. Now, when we did our first HTML web pages, we played around with headings, didn't we? And we knew that heading went from heading 1 down to heading 6. And the sizes of those headings would get smaller. So with most footers in most websites, we know that they're quite small. So I'm going to suggest we put a footer of a H5. And then I'm going to get you to put this website was created by, and put your name, and then we're going to close that H5 tag. Now we're going to move inside of the content area. I'm going to go on to line 9, and between the open tag for content and the close tag for content, my cursor's here, I'm going to press enter a couple of times, and I'm now going to put some content in. Now, if you're reading a book, and a website's like a book is made up of lots of text, isn't it? And what are these chunks of text called? Paragraphs. And what could we call a paragraph, or what tag would we use for a paragraph in HTML? P. Well done. So there's my open tag for a paragraph, and I'm going to put this is where my web page content will go, and then close that P tag. Then up here in the navigation bit, once you've done that, we're going to press enter again. So between the open tag and the close tag on line 8, press enter a couple of times, and we're going to do the same thing like we did in content, and we're going to type a P tag for paragraph and say this is my navigation bar area, and close that tag. And once you've done that, we're going to move up to banner, and we're going to go inside of the banner area, exactly like we did for navbar and content, and we're going to add an area for a P tag. So we type this is my banner, and close the P tag. Once you've done that, make sure we save, and then all I do is keep alt tabbing between the page that I had open for my web page previously, but alt tab and then refresh your page, and you'll notice now that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of text. Okay, it's nothing special so far. Now I'm going to cover a new tag to you, and that new tag is where we're going to let the magic happen, I suppose. We want to make these websites and pages look really, really good and make them pop. And the way that we do that is we use what's known as CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and these are what add the presentation of content, or the presentation styles, to our structure, because HTML effectively is just the structure, it's the scaffolding for our content. Now the new tag is going to be found inside of the head tag after the title close tag. So on line 3 I want you to do a couple of character returns, and then on line 4 we're going to type in a new tag for style, and then on line 5 I'm going to do the close tag for style. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the beginning of line 4, and I'm going to put a new line so that there's space on line 4. And I'm going to add a comment. Now comments are very useful because if you was to give your code to someone else and they didn't quite understand what you were trying to achieve, you can add a comment and say this is to do with this, or this was supposed to make this happen. It's also a good way of making yourself aware of your own code and showing that you understand what's going on. And obviously with your assignments, when it comes to it, we really want you to show you understand. So comments in HTML look like this. You have a pointy bracket, an exclamation mark, and a minus minus. Notice that from this point onwards, the code has now gone green. The reason for that going green is because it's saying everything after this point here is now the beginning of a comment. So what I want to do is put, after these minus minuses, I would say this is all the styles for this web page. Now, to close the comment tag, we need to put minus minus and then close that bracket. Notice now it's all gone back to its original color, but only the bit here is green. That's how we want it. So as we go through the HTML side of things, we can add comments here and there as we go. So let's do another one, for example. So we could put next to line 14 a new comment to say this is my nav. Okay. So the next bit that we're going to move on to is go back up to our style tags, this new tag that we've just entered in. Inside here, we're going to use slightly different code to what we've got used to in creating the structure. So I'm going to put a couple of spaces, a couple of new lines, and I'm going to start at line 6. Now, as we covered earlier on, we know that we are giving IDs to these divs so that we can target them later. So we know that we've got a wrapper, we've got a banner, we've got a navbar, content, footer. We want to target these individual div IDs in our CSS. And the way that we do that is we use some special symbols. So where there's an ID for a div, we use a hashtag, or as the Americans call it, the pound sign. So that's saying that we're going to be looking for an ID. That corresponds to that. Then we want to say what the name of the hashtag is, or what the name of the ID. So we're going to be targeting the wrapper. So after the hashtag inside the style area, we want to type wrapper. Now, after that, I'm going to do a new line. So that's basically going to say to the web browser, okay, I've got some styles. Look for the ID of wrapper, which is down here. And then we're going to create some brackets. And we're going to use a different bracket to what we've been using before. We can use a curly bracket. Now, on your Notepad++, it might, when you do an open bracket, give you automatically a close bracket. If it has, that's fantastic. If it hasn't, it's not a problem. What I would do is just put them on different lines. So on line 7 you have the open bracket, and on line 8 you have the closed bracket. All of the stuff inside of these brackets, so that's an open bracket and that's a closed bracket, is going to be linked to our wrapper style. Is that clear so far? So what we want to do is we're going to set some properties, or some properties within inside that style. So I'm going to put a new line, so I have a space in line 8, and we're going to declare and set a few parameters, a few properties. So the first one we're going to look at is we're going to set a width. So to do that, we just simply type width. So this is the property. Then we put a colon, and then after the colon we put the value. So the value of this is we're going to set it to be 960 pixels. And we use px to define and declare pixel. Now after that, we want to put a semicolon. So basically what that's telling the web browser is that's the end of that value. So read the next thing. We're not going to put height just yet, and I'll come on to that in a little time. What we want to do is we want to set some colour, and the purpose of me setting the colour in this instance is so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to give a background colour, and notice the nice thing about Notepad++ is it gives us an option list. So you don't have to type it out, you can just scroll down to what you want, and we want the background colour. If you click on that, it puts it all in for you. So I've got the property, I want to put the value, so I'm going to put colon, and then in this instance I'm just going to give it a background colour of green, and then semicolon at the end of it. What I'd like you to do is save that, so make that disco blue, and then preview it. So run it in Chrome, or if you've still got it open, Alt Tab, and then refresh your page. Notice now that you will have a nice green background around your wrapper. What we now want to do is we want to make it a little bit more sort of like a web page. How many websites do you know are snapped to the left hand side of your screen? Yeah, so they're next to the side of your web browser. So look at this one here. It's all the way over here, and there's a lot of space over here. They're not centralized, are they? So in order to make our websites get centered, we're going to play around with the margins. So after our background color green, we're going to put another new line, and we're going to play around with the margin, and we're going to play around with the left margin, and we're going to set its value to be auto, A-U-T-O. What that's going to do is automatically adjust the left hand margin of your web page. So if I was to save that and then go back and look at my preview, it's automatically adjusted the margin, so it's now snapped over to the right hand side, which is not that good for us because we want it to be in the center. So if we go back to our code, if that's dealt with the left hand margin, what could we do? We could play around with the right hand margin. So if we do margin hyphen right and set that to auto and then save it. Now if I go back to my preview, notice the web page is now slap bang in the middle. Now on your web page, if you make the window size smaller and larger, notice that the content will move automatically into the middle of that web browser window.
That O looks like an S to me, but I ain't got glasses on, so it's obviously not an O.
Now what I want to do is I want to move on from that, and I want to target a few other dividers, and I want to target the banner divider. Now how would I go about doing that?
Hashtag.
Well done. Hashtag banner. Now notice, because I got into the practice of doing the open and the close bracket, I don't necessarily have to remember to close it at this point, because I opened it and closed it at the same time. So I had that one there and that one there when I created it. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to create the open and the close bracket at the same time. A lot of people find that they have a few issues with style sheets because they either forget to do the close bracket, forget to do the open bracket, they forget to put the colon or the semicolon. These are the key easy wins to any time you need to bug test because something's not working, to check for those straight away. So I have my hashtag to look for the ID, and now I have the banner, which is the name, and my open and close tags, or brackets, sorry. Inside here, because the banner is inside of our wrapper, we don't necessarily have to worry about the width, because it's automatically going to be set, because we know the wrapper, remember our multi-bag of crisps, is automatically set to that. It can't go beyond that. So now we can play around with height. So we could set the height, so simply by typing HEIGHT, and we could set a height of 100 pixels and a semicolon at the end to say that that statement's done. That's fantastic, but what I want us to do is I want us to be able to identify quite quickly what's the banner, what's the wrapper, what's the content area. So I'm going to give this one a background color too. So if we type in background color, and we want to give it a value that's different to what we had before. So let's use red, for instance. Don't forget your semicolon, just to give a new line, and you're good. So what we're going to do is we're going to save that. So click on our save disk, make it go blue, and then we're going to go in either run, launching Chrome, or Alt and Tab again, and we're just going to refresh our page. Notice we've now got a banner there. Okay. So we're going to go back, and what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to create the styles for content and the styles for footer. A quick win for that is you simply copy and paste what you've done here, and you can paste it in a couple of times over and just change the name to what you want it to be. Don't forget also to change the color, because otherwise it's going to look like it's the same part of the other divider. So I'm going to change this one to be blue, and I'm going to change this one to be yellow. So just to repeat what I've done, so I've copied our original banner and I've pasted it twice over, and I've just renamed the name here to correspond to the other divs that we've got, and then I've just changed the color inside each of these. Well done, someone spotted that I've missed navbar. So I'm going to put navbar in manually. So I'll type in hashtag navbar I'm going to type in its height, and its background color. Notice I've put navbar underneath the footer. The order in which you put these CSS styles doesn't really matter at this point in time. Okay, so I could have even put the banner down the bottom. It would still run okay. So once you've done that, save it and then preview it. And you should have what looks like a rainbow of colours on your screen. So it should look a little bit like that. So going around the classroom, I've noticed that there are a number of things that popped up. One of the most common things I saw was that people had put their div areas, their close tags, in the wrong place. Okay, so as you can see, click on it and look for the corresponding close and see if it contains it. So we know the wrapper is the open part and the closed part, which is our multi-bag packet of crisps. And in here you can see the close and open tags for the individual bags if you wish, and make sure that they appear as they're supposed to. One of the other things that popped up was that some of the colours. One of you had put in navy blue. Now you can use these sets of colours here, fine. But when you start to go into different shades or different colour scopes of colour, some of the reserved words aren't noticed. Now we can deal with colours in a different way. We can use what is known as hexadecimal colour coding. Hexadecimal colour codes are basically numerical values for red, green and blue. And the way that we can do that, if you wanted a navy blue for instance, what you can do is you go onto a web page and you can type in hex colour codes or colour picker, and Google themselves at the top show you a little colour picker. And you might notice this from things like Photoshop, etc. And what you can do is you can slide your colour selection up and down here. You can change the colour and the hue and the lightness and darkness of your colour selection to whatever you want. So say for instance I wanted to go for like an orange yellow. I find it here, I can move over to a warmer colour up here, and then notice these colours here. Now the one that I'm going to be looking at is this hexadecimal colour code here. If I select that down to the hashtag, so hashtag and then these numbers here and letters, right click and copy that, and then go back to my Notepad++, I can change the colour, so take out the blue and I can paste in the hexadecimal colour into here. So if I now save that and then run it, you'll notice that my orange that I selected in the colour picker up here is now present in my content area here. This is a really good way of dealing with colours. It's like going down to B&Q or any DIY shop and seeing an orange that's classified as I don't know, Terry's chocolate orange. Yeah, there are some silly names for silly colours in paint shops, but we don't use silly names, we use hexadecimal colour codes. Okay? So what you could do on yours, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the text that's found inside of our div areas. Alright, so we know that we've got some text here that's being displayed inside of our navbar div, and we've got some in other places as well. Now something to notice and something to recognize is where we've given IDs to things like here, when we're dealing with CSS we target them with a hashtag. In this instance our P tags do not have any ID or anything attached to them, so if we was to target them in CSS, all we'd simply do is type the letter P. Alright, so if I was to now type in and open a bracket underneath that and do the close bracket as well, anything that's in here is going to target every P tag. So if I go back to our web page, notice that the text is all snapped very tightly to the side and to the top of every one of these dividers. Okay, what we want to do is, there's no websites or web pages where it's that snapped or that tight. So we want to give it some space, and we do that by doing what's known as padding. So if we type in the word padding in our brackets and give it a value of 10 and 10 pixels, and then give it a semicolon at the end, then save that and then preview it. Now I'm going to just refresh my page, and if you look, watch what happens to each piece of text within inside the divider. It's going to move. It's moved down and it's moved along. So that is 10 pixels of padding around the P tag. Something to note, and some of you may have, with eagle eyes, have seen, that the one down here didn't do anything. Why do you think that is?
It's labelled as H5.
Because it's labelled as a H5, so we've not targeted H5, we've only targeted the P tags. What we can also do is, because as you can see here, it's gone down from the top and from the sides, we can target specific parts of that padding. So if I, after the X, put a space and then do 50 pixels, and then save that, and then preview it, refresh the page. Notice it's moved in 50, but it's still 10 from the top. So what we've done is we're targeting here the left and the right, and that targets the top and the bottom. If we wanted to go even further, we could target further areas. So I could put 4 values. If I put in 4 values, if I save that now and then refresh, it will shift everything everywhere. What we're doing is we're targeting, and it starts this way, as you would read a clock. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay? So if we have 2 values, it does top and bottom, left and right. If I have 1 value, it targets the top, right, bottom, and left. Okay? So if we revert back to having just 10 pixels around our P, and then save that, and it might make it look a little bit better. So the same principle applies to dealing with our H tag at H5. So down on the bottom, our lovely little H5 tag, this is going to be our footer, isn't it? It's our little declaration down the bottom. So inside of our style area, we're going to type in H5. Because there's no ID and there's no class or anything like that, we're just going to type in H5. Open the bracket and then close the bracket. So now I'm going to put some similar sorts of values as I did with the P tag. I'm going to copy and paste the padding of 10 pixels just to make it easier. So copy and paste that. Makes it quicker. And then underneath that, we're going to make this centered. So I just want, in most web pages, if you look at the footer parts, it's normally in the center. So the way that we deal with that is we're going to do what's known as text hyphen align. And then what do you think we're going to put as a value? We're going to type in center. We save that. So text align, the value of center. Make sure you get your semicolon at the end. We save that and then preview it or refresh our page. Notice we've now moved it down and we've got it in the middle. Now I want to go back to the code and I want to highlight a couple of points I didn't highlight at the beginning. The way that we write our HTML code and our CSS code, we spell things in an American way. So us Brits will always put a U in colour. Don't forget that obviously because we're doing it in an American text and American code, we omit or get rid of the U. Alright? It's a habit that you have to take on. For those people that are dyslexic, like I am, it actually works quite well in our favour because you spell it how you say it. Colour.